Okay, let's go ahead and start number 10. So number 10 is going to step it up a little bit. We now have two radicals. Now this type of example has come up before with two radicals, but it's going to turn out a little differently than we did before. And I believe that was number 6. But it's not going to end the same way, okay? But it will start the same way in that we need to get the isolated radicals on their own side. So I'm going to add the square root of x to the right side. So I have square root of 2x plus 1 equals 1 plus the square root of x. Now I know over here, this is isolated, so I'm going to square both sides. So on the left side, I get 2x plus 1. And on the right side, I have to expand this in order to FOIL it. So I have 2x plus 1 equals 1 times 1 plus square root of x plus square root of x plus square root of x squared. Okay. Then we simplify that. 1 plus 2 square root of x plus square root of x squared is x. Now again, you can skip over that middle step there, but you need to be very comfortable with your skills and you make sure that you do it correctly, because if you mess it up, obviously everything else will also domino effect from there. So if you want to write it out, totally fine. Okay. So now the problem is that in the problems before, at this point, we'd be able to set it equal to 0 and factor. But in this problem, we still have a radical. Sorry, I might sneeze in any second. So we're going to have to essentially repeat part of the process because there's still a radical. So we need to isolate this radical in order to essentially do this part again. So I'm going to subtract x, subtract 1, and I get x equals 2 square root of x. Okay, the one's canceled, so that is all we are left with. So at this point, we're going to square it. Now, the question comes about this 2. So technically, is the radical isolated? Yes, it's by itself. There's nothing added or subtracted to it. Okay, is the 2 affecting it? Yes, but the only other thing we could do to simplify it further is to divide by 2. Now remember, this is technically 1x. Now, because 1 doesn't divide by 2 nicely, we would have a fraction. Really don't want to deal with fractions, right? If you don't have to. So if this happened to be a 2, 4, 6, 8, who do you appreciate? Whatever, as long as it was an even number, I would have said divide by 2. But because it's not, we're just going to leave it there. Okay, and we're going to square both sides. So I get x squared equals square the 2, so you get 4, square the x squared, square the square root of x, which is x. So you get x squared equals 4x. So now we have down to the quadratic where we have an x squared. So now we'll set it equal to 0. Probably should write that. X squared minus 4x equals 0. At this point, we would factor. Now, we only have 2 terms, so that's okay. 2 terms means I could do GCF, I could do difference of squares. That's it, actually. So we have GCF in this scenario. If you can't tell, there's x's in both of them. So x times x minus 4. Okay. Set those each equal to 0. So x equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0. Don't forget about the GCF. And this is as simplified as it can be. And x equals 4 would be my other option. Okay. Now we're at the point of checking our work. So square root of 2 times 0 plus 1 minus the square root of 0 equals 1. Does it work? 2 times 0, 0. Plus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 1 minus 0 is 1. That works. Then let's try the other one. 2 times 4 plus 1 minus the square root of 4 equals 1. Okay, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 minus square root of 4 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. This one works too. So we have a 2-answer problem. Okay, it does exist. It does exist. They are not always an extraneous answer. Okay, so let's talk about a few things on number 10 before we move forward. So remember, when there are 2 radicals, you're going to put 1 on each side, then square both sides. Okay. Then at this point, there's still a radical, let's try that again. A radical. So you're going to isolate and square both sides again. Okay. Once you do that, let me draw a little arrow here. Then we have quadratic again. So you set equal to 0 and factor to solve. And when you do that, once you factor, you set each quantity equal to 0. And you check your answers. Okay, basically rewrote all the steps we've done before, but there they are again. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started and ready for number 11. Okay, let's look at number 11. So number 11, I have square root of 5x minus 1 minus the square root of x plus 2 equals 3. So 2 radicals. I'm going to want to isolate my radicals, so 1 on each side. Now, it doesn't matter where the other numbers go, but you typically want them to go with the smaller radical or the radical with less things in it. So I'm going to add square root of x and subtract 2 to the other side. I have square root of 5x minus 1 equals 1 plus the square root of x. Okay, now they're both on their own side. So I'm going to square both sides. So I have 5x minus 1 equals quantity 1 plus square root of x times 1 plus square root of x. We need a FOIL. So I have 1 plus square root of x plus square root of x plus square root of x squared, which simplifies down to 1 plus 2 square root of x plus x. Now remember, I did say that if you wanted to simplify it right to that step, that's fine. From here, right, if you need that middle step to help you out, you can do that. So then we're going to now have our next radical. So we're going to isolate this one. So I have 4x minus 2 equals 2 square root of x. Okay, now at this point, we talked about that if you have something in front of the radical, you can isolate it or you don't have to. But in this case, because they're both divisible by 2 on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and do that and simplify this for me. So now I have 2x minus 1 equals the square root of x, right? And I'm going to start that process again. I'm going to square both sides. So that means I'm going to FOIL my left side now. And on the right side, I now have just x. So I'm going to FOIL. I get 4x squared minus 2x plus 1. Combine like terms. And we have this. Now we're going to set it equal to 0 because we now have that quadratic. So I'm going to subtract x to get 4x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. Now I'm ready to FOIL. Not FOIL, factor. They're both F's. Excuse me. If you haven't noticed, I have a cold. Just runny nose, that's all I have. So we know we have 4x squared, which means it can either be 4x and x or 2x and 2x. And then we have 1. Okay, well, 1 has to be 1. There's no other factors of 1. We're multiplying to a positive, but adding to a negative. So they're going to be negative, and we know it has to be 1. So we know that bit of information. Now you just need to figure out, is it 2x and x, or is it 4x and x? The answer is it is 4x and x. Okay. And now we're going to set both of these equal to 0 and solve. So I get 4x equals 1, so x equals 1/4, and x equals 1. Okay, now if you notice, this is a lot of work, okay? It's very vertical. Please do not do this horizontal, okay? Please make sure it's also a nice line of information, okay? Please don't have it doing crazy things on the paper, okay? Now we gotta check our work. Okay, 5 times 1/4 minus 1 minus the square root of 1/4 plus 2 equals 3. Now, I said earlier that if you had a square root of like 1/2, 3/4, 1/4, that's an easy fraction. But there's a lot going on in here, so totally fine if you want to use that calculator. Okay? And if you use your calculator, you should end up with an answer of 2, which does not equal 3. So 1/4 is extraneous. Now let's see if 1 works. 5 times 1 minus 1 minus the square root of 1 plus 2 equals 3. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 1 is 1. So we have 2 minus 1 plus 2, which is 3. So that one does in fact work. Okay, now keep in mind, this is also a lot of work because I write down every single thing that I'm doing so you don't go, wait, how did that get there? Okay, so on number 12, the last one for this lesson, the last normal, well, I'll explain in a second. The last one for the set of videos, we're going to go ahead and do a condensed version, meaning I'm not going to write the extra things that we typically write down. Okay, some of these things. A lot of these things you could do in your head, so we're going to talk about how you can condense some of these things. Okay, we're going to do that on the next video. Or not the next video. We're going to do that on this video, so don't change the video yet. Okay, let's go ahead and start this problem. Number 12, square root of 2x minus 1 minus 4 equals negative square root of x minus 4. Now, the radicals are already isolated, but we do have the negative 4 to deal with. So could I go from here and start squaring both sides? Yes, but we have this negative. And remember, we talked about how we don't really like negatives in front of those radicals because we like them positive, but it makes it a little bit easier when there's something in front of it. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 4 to the other side, but I'm not going to write it. I'm just going to do it. So add the 4, so I get 4 minus square root of x minus 4. Okay, I know that saves only one line, but if you're wanting to save lines, that would be the one you could do. Now we're going to square both sides. Okay, so I get 2x minus 1. Okay, 4 minus square root of x minus 4 times 4 minus square root of x minus 4. Now I said we were going to condense it, but if you didn't notice, this radical is a little bit more difficult than we've done before. So we're going to condense it, but not, totally just make it disappear, okay? So now I need a FOIL. So 4 times 4, and then I get 4 times negative square root of x minus 4, which would be negative 4 times square root of x minus 4. And that happens twice. Okay, now I'm not actually going to square or multiply what is in the radicals because I know I'm multiplying by itself. So therefore, I'm going to be left with what is in or with what's underneath the radical. Okay, if I square negative square root of x minus 4 times negative square root of x minus 4, I'm going to actually get, well, and I'll write it down so we can stay consistent. Technically, I would get x minus 4 quantity squared. Okay. And so then when I combine, okay, square root of something squared is just what it is underneath. Okay, like I just said. Okay, now we have our radical again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and isolate that to the other side. Again, I said we were going to condense it, but this one's a lot more complicated. So we're going to go ahead and just write it all out. So I'm going to subtract 16. I'm going to subtract x, and I'm going to add 4. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than the ones we've had before. So I got x, that's negative 17 plus 4, which gives us negative 13. Okay, x minus 13 does not divide by negative 8, so therefore we're going to leave it, and we're going to square both sides to deal now with this radical. So now I have x minus 13 expanded. Okay, on the right side, remember we're going to have to distribute our square. We can square both parts. And the reason why we can square both parts here and not here is because of the operation sign. Okay, if you are adding or subtracting between two terms, then you can't you can't distribute your square. But these two terms are just multiplied, so that's why we can distribute it. So negative 8 squared is 64 times x minus 4. Okay, let's FOIL that left side. So I have x squared. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead on this step because we know we're going to get the same term twice. So negative 13x and negative 13x, which is negative 26x, plus 169. And I needed to distribute on the right side, okay? I've gotten my x squared, which means I'm going to eventually have to set equal to 0. In order to do that, I need this to be simplified. So 64x minus 256. Now, I'm sure some of you are like, oh, great, that number, great. We're going to have to factor with those numbers. It'll be okay. So we're going to subtract 64x. And we're going to add 256. So x squared minus 90x plus 425 equals 0. Okay, now remember, you can use your calculator. So y equals 425 divided by x, second graph, and then look for your factors. Okay, now we are looking for factors of positive 425, but add to a negative. So that means we need two negative numbers. Two negative numbers will get me to negative 90, but also multiply to a positive 425. And that would be 5 and 85, or to be more specific, -5 and -85 going in there. And then we're going to set equal to 0. So x equals 5 and x equals 85. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I'm going to let you guys check those two answers. Okay, go ahead and check and see how they work. Okay, let's see how that went for you guys. So we're going to check our work. So 2 times 5 minus 1 minus 4 equals minus 5. Well, we're not getting there today. Not getting there right now. 5 minus 4. All right. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 minus 4 is -1. 5 minus 4 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. Times the -1. That works. 2 times 85 minus 1 minus 4 equals negative square root of 85 minus 4. Okay, you could use a calculator with this one if you really wanted to, or you could do it in your head. Okay, doesn't bother me. 85 is a larger number than we've definitely been working with. And what you'll find is that you'll get 9 equals -9, which is not true. So 85 is extraneous, and 5 is our last number, or is our only answer. Okay, now again, I know I said we are going to condense this a little bit, but it was a little bit more complicated. So I realized that it does take a little work and a lot of effort for these problems, and that's why we did them really slowly. So this is the end of this video. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 more on an extra video. If you feel like you're comfortable with the skills from 1 through 12, you're good to go, or I guess technically 7 through 12 for the second set of numbers, then you're good to go. If you want a couple more problems to look at, then you can go to the next video to look at the next 2 problems. And if you need extra help beyond that, please come to tutoring. Okay, see you in the next one.